I'm Amber Williams, 29 years old, and until last week, I thought I had everything figured out. I was grading math quizzes from my 4th grade class when my phone lit up with a notification, a voice memo from Nathan, my fiancé of 1 year. We'd been together for 4 wonderful years and were just 2 months away from our dream wedding. I smiled, expecting one of his sweet messages. Instead, what I heard shattered the perfect future I'd been planning. That accidental voice memo meant for his sister changed everything I thought I knew about us. Before I continue with what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you've ever had a relationship moment that completely blindsided you, hit that subscribe button so we can share these life-changing experiences together. I tapped on the voice memo notification, still smiling. Nathan often sent me little audio messages during his workday, sometimes just to say he loved me, other times to discuss dinner plans or share a funny story about a coworker. This one was almost 2 minutes long. "Hey Megan," his voice began. My finger hovered over the stop button. Clearly this wasn't meant for me. But for his sister I should stop listening. But then I heard my name and curiosity got the better of me. "I don't know what to do about Amber and this wedding stuff," Nathan continued, his voice tinged with frustration I rarely heard. "She's driving me crazy with all these details and decisions. Like today, she sent me 15 different pictures of flower arrangements and got upset when I didn't have a strong opinion about which one was better." I froze, papers forgotten on my lap. The red pen I'd been using to mark incorrect math problems slipped from my fingers, leaving a small mark on my jeans. She's just become so controlling about everything. The venue, the food, the guest list. It's like she's obsessed with making everything perfect, and my input doesn't matter unless I agree with her. Mom keeps asking about the plans, and when I tell her things might change, Amber gets upset that I'm not presenting a united front or whatever. Each word felt like a physical blow. I had no idea Nathan felt this way. We'd discussed the wedding plans extensively, and he'd always seemed on board with my ideas. Occasionally he's been quiet during planning sessions, but I'd assumed he just didn't care as much about the details. I never thought he was silently resenting me. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm making a mistake, you know," Nathan's voice continued, and my heart stopped completely. Like, is this what the rest of my life is going to be like? Her making all the decisions and me just going along with them? I love her, but this wedding planning is showing me a side of her I'm not sure I can live with forever. I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to spin around me as tears filled my eyes. A mistake? Our relationship was a mistake? Our future marriage was a mistake? My mind flashed back to our engagement night 1 year ago. Nathan had taken me to the restaurant where we'd had our first date. After dessert, he's gotten down on one knee, pulled out a perfect emerald-cut diamond ring exactly the style I'd once mentioned I loved, and promised to spend his life making me happy. I'd cried then too. But from joy, not from the searing pain that now filled my chest. "Anyway," Nathan's voice continued, sounding tired, "call me back when you can. I could use some advice from someone who knows her well. Maybe I'm just stressed about work. Talk later." The recording ended, but I sat frozen in place, slowly, not quite believing what I'd heard. I played it again, and then a third time. Each replay only confirmed the horrible truth. Nathan had serious doubts about our relationship, about me, and he'd never once mentioned them to my face. My finger hovered over Nathan's contact information. I should call him right now, confront him about what I'd heard. But what would I even say? How do you start a conversation with "So I heard you think marrying me might be a mistake"? I needed time to process this, to figure out what it meant for us, for our future. I set my phone down and moved mechanically through the house. Abandoning the stack of quizzes in our bedroom, I stared at the wedding planner spread open on my nightstand, filled with carefully chosen details for our perfect day, the day that Nathan apparently dreaded. I sank down onto our bed, the mattress we'd shopped for together, taking turns testing each one until we found the perfect balance of firm and soft that suited us both. Had he just been going along with that decision too? Were there other things he's agreed to just to avoid conflict? The tears came then, hot and fast. I curled onto my side, clutching a pillow to my chest as my body shook with sobs. Everything I thought I knew about our relationship had just been called into question. The carefully constructed future I'd been planning suddenly seemed built on a foundation of sand, crumbling beneath me. Morning arrived after a mostly sleepless night. My eyes were puffy and red-rimmed from crying, and a dull headache pulsed behind them. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to erase the evidence of my distress. Nathan was still asleep, his face peaceful in a way that made my heart twist painfully. How could he sleep so soundly while my world was collapsing? By the time he woke up, I had coffee brewing and was mechanically spreading peanut butter on toast. Though the thought of eating made my stomach turn, I heard him moving around upstairs, the familiar sounds of his morning routine, the shower running, the closet door sliding open, the soft pad of his footsteps. "Morning," he said cheerfully as he entered the kitchen, pressing a kiss to my temple before pouring himself coffee. He was dressed for work in a blue button-down shirt I'd given him last Christmas, his hair still damp from the shower. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I managed, pushing a plate of toast toward him. The normalcy of the moment felt surreal. How many mornings had we spent like this? Comfortable in our routine, unaware that anything was wrong. "You okay? You look a little tired," Nathan said, glancing at me as he added cream to his coffee. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Inside my head, his words from the voice memo played on repeat. Sometimes I wonder if I'm making a mistake. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the tension, at least on my side, building with every tick of the kitchen clock. "So I was thinking," Nathan began, completely oblivious to my inner turmoil, "maybe we could check out that new restaurant downtown this weekend, the Italian place everyone's been talking about." The casual suggestion, planning our future together while harboring doubts about that very future, was what finally broke me. "I heard the voice memo," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the chaos inside me. "The one you meant to send to Megan yesterday." Nathan froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. I watched as realization dawned on his face, followed quickly by guilt and then something like defensiveness. "Amber, you think marrying me is a mistake?" The question came out smaller than I intended, vulnerable in a way I hated. Nathan set down his mug, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd always found endearing before. Now it just seemed like confirmation of his discomfort. "That's not exactly what I said," he began carefully. "You have to understand, I was just venting to Megan. Everyone says things they don't fully mean when they're frustrated. So you didn't mean it," I challenged, my hurt turning to anger. "You're not actually feeling controlled and steamrolled by me?" "You're overreacting," Nathan said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "It wasn't that bad. I was just stressed about work and the wedding planning got overwhelming for a minute." "Overreacting," I repeated, the word stinging. "You told your sister you're having doubts about marrying me, and I'm overreacting by being upset about it." "Everyone has doubts sometimes," he countered. "It doesn't mean anything serious. It was just a moment of wedding stress." A moment. My voice rose despite my efforts to keep calm. "Nathan, you said this wedding planning is showing you a side of me you're not sure you can live with forever. That sounds pretty serious to me." He sighed, glancing at his watch. "Look, I have a meeting I can't miss this morning. Can we talk about this tonight, when we've both had time to calm down?" The dismissal felt like another blow. My feelings weren't important enough to make him late for work. Just another example of him avoiding difficult conversations, something I was only now realizing had been a pattern throughout our relationship. "I think I need some space today," I said quietly. "Maybe you could stay with Megan tonight." Nathan looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment he nodded. "If that's what you need." He stood, gathering his keys and phone. "But Amber, I do love you. That hasn't changed." After he left, I called in sick to school, something I rarely did. The thought of standing in front of 24 fourth graders, pretending everything was fine while teaching fractions, was beyond my capabilities today. Alone in our suddenly too quiet house, I found myself looking through old photos and text messages, searching for signs I might have missed. Had there been clues all along that Nathan was unhappy, times when he's tried to express his feelings and I'd dismissed them? There was the argument about the venue 6 months ago. I'd fallen in love with a renovated historic building downtown, while Nathan had preferred a more rustic barn setting outside the city. After visiting both, I'd made a detailed case for why the downtown venue was more practical, closer for out-of-town guests, better parking, nicer accommodations nearby. Nathan had eventually agreed, saying, "If it makes you happy, then it's fine." Had I pressured him into that decision? And the guest list discussions, I'd pushed for including my extended family and college friends, while Nathan had wanted a smaller, more intimate gathering. We'd ended up with a compromise closer to my original vision than his. But those were just normal compromises couples make, weren't they? I hadn't thought I was being controlling. I'd thought we were making decisions together. My phone rang, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. "Rebecca, my best friend since college and maid of honor. I need you," I said when I answered, my voice breaking. "I'm on my way," Rebecca said without hesitation. "Give me 20 minutes. Do you need anything?" "Ice cream wouldn't hurt," I managed, attempting a weak joke through my tears. True to her word, Rebecca arrived 20 minutes later, armed with 2 pints of Ben & Jerry Rest and a concerned expression. She'd been my rock through every major life event since we were a teen college finals. Bad breakups, job interviews, and the death of my grandmother 3 years ago. Now I needed her steady presence more than ever. "Okay, tell me everything," she said once we were settled on my couch. Ice cream containers opened between us. I played her the voice memo, watching her expression change from curiosity to shock to anger as Nathan's words filled the living room. When it ended, she set down her spoon with deliberate care. "That absolute jerk," she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. "How dare he say those things about you behind your back instead of talking to you directly?" Her immediate defense of me was exactly what I'd expected, and exactly what I needed in that moment. Rebecca had never been shy about her opinions, and her loyalty was unwavering. "I had no idea he felt this way," I said, pushing my mostly untouched ice cream aside. "Am I really that controlling, Beck? Have I been steamrolling him this whole time without realizing it?" Rebecca's expression softened. "Honey, you're not controlling. You're organized and you know what you want. Those are good qualities, but maybe to Nathan they feel controlling," I persisted. Looking back, there have been times when I pushed for what I wanted with the wedding plans. "Like what?" Rebecca asked, giving me space to process aloud. "Well, the venue for one. He wanted that barn place, but I convinced him the downtown venue made more sense." I twisted my engagement ring around my finger, a nervous habit I'd developed since Nathan put it there. "And the guest list? He wanted something smaller, but I insisted on inviting all my cousins and the friends from my teaching program." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, so maybe there have been some decisions where you took the lead, but that doesn't make you controlling, Ember. Someone has to make decisions, and let's be honest, if it were left to most guys, they'd plan a wedding with pizza and beer in someone's backyard." I smiled faintly at that, but the humor quickly faded. "The problem isn't just that I've been making decisions. It's that Nathan has apparently been silently resenting them instead of telling me how he feels. That's on him, not you," Rebecca pointed out. "He's a grown man. If he has opinions, he needs to express them." "But what if I haven't been creating space for his opinions?" I countered. "What if I've been dismissing them without realizing it?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment, stirring her rapidly melting ice cream. "Can I be completely honest with you, as someone who loves you and wants the best for you?" I nodded, bracing myself. "You can be particular about things," she said carefully. "Remember when we planned your 30th birthday party, you had very specific ideas about everything from the napkin colors to the playlist. That's just being organized." I protested weakly. "It is," Rebecca agreed, "but sometimes your organization can come across as inflexibility, like when I suggested that Mexican restaurant for your birthday dinner and you immediately shot it down because it didn't fit your vision for the evening." The memory made me wince. I had been pretty adamant about that, insisting on the upscale bistro I'd had my heart set on despite Rebecca's suggestion. "So you think Nathan's right? I am controlling." My voice wavered. "I think you're taking his side," I said, a flash of hurt and betrayal cutting through me. "No, Amber, I'm not taking sides," Rebecca said firmly. "I'm on your side always, but being on your side means helping you see the whole picture, not just telling you what you want to hear." Her words hit home. Wasn't that exactly what I wanted from Nathan? Honest communication, even when it was difficult. I had a similar issue with Daniel early in our relationship, Rebecca continued, referencing her boyfriend of 3 years. "I kept planning these elaborate date nights without really consulting him. I thought I was being romantic, but he felt like his preferences didn't matter. We almost broke up over it." "What changed?" I asked. "We learned to communicate better," she said simply. "I had to learn to ask what he wanted instead of assuming, and he had to learn to speak up instead of silently going along with things until he resented me." I considered her words carefully. Had Nathan and I fallen into a similar pattern, me making plans and decisions with increasing confidence, him retreating into silence until resentment built? "The thing is," I said slowly, "even if I have been too controlling about the wedding, Nathan should have talked to me about it, not complained to his sister behind my back." "Absolutely," Rebecca agreed. "What he did wasn't okay, but understanding your part in this situation might help you figure out how to move forward." "If we move forward," I murmured, the thought sending a fresh wave of pain through me. "Do you want to?" Rebecca asked gently. I thought about Nathan, his kind eyes, the way he made me laugh, how he'd supported me through my first challenging year of teaching. 4 years of history of building a life together, yes, I admitted, but I don't know if he does, not really. "I think you need to ask him that directly," Rebecca said. "No assumptions, just honest conversation." "Will you stay while I talk to him?" I asked, suddenly feeling vulnerable at the thought of facing Nathan alone. Rebecca squeezed my hand. "If that's what you want, but I think this is a conversation you two need to have privately. This is about your relationship, not mine with either of you." I nodded, knowing she was right. "He's coming back tonight. I need to prepare what I'm going to say. Just speak from your heart," Rebecca advised. "Be honest about how you feel, but try to listen to him too. Really listen, without planning your response while he's still talking." For the rest of the afternoon I thought about what I wanted to say to Nathan. Not accusations or defenses, but honest communication about how his words had hurt me and what I needed from our relationship moving forward. By the time I heard his key in the lock that evening, I felt centered and clear, despite the lingering pain. Nathan entered our home cautiously, as if unsure of his welcome. He carried a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers, simple and cheerful. The gesture was so typical of him, thoughtful but understated, that it made my heart ache with a fresh wave of uncertainty. "Hi," he said, his voice quiet in the stillness of our living room. "I brought these for you." He held out the flowers and I accepted them with a murmured thanks. "Can we talk?" I asked, gesturing to the couch where Rebecca and I had sat earlier. The ice cream containers were long gone, but I'd left everything else untouched, including the wedding magazines spread across the coffee table. Nathan nodded, removing his jacket and sitting down with noticeable tension in his shoulders. "Amber, about that voice memo." "Wait," I interrupted gently. "I've been thinking about what I want to say all day, and I'd like to go first, if that's okay." He nodded again, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I took a deep breath, centering myself. When I heard that voice memo, it hurt me more than anything ever has, not just because you were complaining about me, but because you were sharing doubts about our entire relationship with your sister instead of with me. My voice remained steady, though emotion threatened to overwhelm me. "You said you wonder if marrying me is a mistake. That's not something small, Nath." I didn't mean, he started, but I held up a hand. "Please, let me finish, then you can say whatever you need to." When he nodded, I continued. "I thought we were partners who could tell each other anything. Finding out you've been harboring these feelings and never once mentioned them to me, it makes me wonder what else you've been keeping inside. What other resentments have been building that I don't know about?" I paused, gathering my thoughts. I'm not perfect. After thinking about it today, I can see times when I might have been too focused on what I wanted for the wedding without fully considering your feelings. If I've made you feel like your opinions don't matter, I'm truly sorry for that. But Nathan, you have to tell me when you're feeling that way. I can't fix problems I don't know exist. Nathan's expression had softened as I spoke, the defensiveness from our morning conversation replaced by what looked like genuine remorse. "You're right," he said when I finished. "I should have talked to you directly instead of complaining to Megan. I'm sorry, Amber, truly sorry." His apology felt sincere, but it didn't address the core issue. "Why didn't you tell me how you were feeling?" Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Honestly, I didn't want to upset you. You've been so excited about the wedding plans, and every time I tried to suggest something different, you seemed to have reasons why your idea made more sense." "So you just stopped trying?" I asked, trying to keep accusation from my tone. "Yeah, I guess I did," he admitted. "It was easier to go along with things than to create conflict, and then I started feeling resentful, which wasn't fair to you." "No, it wasn't," I agreed quietly. "But it's not just about the wedding," Nathan continued, his voice growing more animated as he finally expressed what he'd been holding back. "My parents have been pushing for a bigger celebration than either of us initially wanted. My mom keeps asking about traditions and details I've never cared about. It's been overwhelming." "This was news to me. You never told me your parents were pressuring you." "Because I thought I could handle it," he said. "I didn't want to add to your stress, but then it all started piling up. Work has been crazy with this new project. My parents call every week with more questions about the wedding, and it felt like every day you had new details for me to weigh in on." "So you bottled it all up until you exploded to your sister," I summarized. "Pretty much," he admitted sheepishly. "Not my finest moment." We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Can I ask you something?" I finally said, my voice small despite my efforts to stay strong. "Do you really think marrying me would be a mistake?" Nathan's eyes widened and he reached for my hands. "No, Amber, no, I love you. I want to marry you." That comment it was stupid frustration talking. I was overwhelmed and venting. "But it came from somewhere real," I pressed. "Those kinds of thoughts don't come out of nowhere." He was quiet for a long moment, and I appreciated that he was actually considering the question rather than rushing to reassure me. "I think I was scared," he finally said, "not of marrying you, but of what our marriage might look like if we couldn't communicate better than we have been. If planning a wedding was this difficult, what about buying a house someday, having kids, making all the big decisions that come with building a life together?" His honesty hurt, but I understood. "I've been thinking about that too," I admitted, "about how I approach decisions. I like to research everything thoroughly and then present what I think is the best option, but I can see how that might feel like I'm not actually asking for your input. And I need to speak up when something matters to me," Nathan added, "instead of just going with the flow to avoid conflict and then resenting you later." "Yes," I agreed, "you do." We looked at each other across the couch, the distance between us both physical and emotional. There was hurt there, but also a new understanding that felt important. "Where do we go from here?" Nathan asked. It was the question I'd been asking myself all day. "I think we need to take some time to really think about what we want, both individually and as a couple." Nathan's face fell. "Are you saying you want to call off the engagement?" "No," I clarified quickly. "I'm saying maybe we should take a day apart to think about what we need from each other, to be sure we're moving forward with clear eyes." He nodded slowly. "Okay, I can do that. I can stay with Megan tonight. And tomorrow we can talk again," I suggested, "after we've both had time to think." "Yes," he agreed, "tomorrow." As he gathered a few things to take to his sister's, the weight of the day settled over me. We'd made progress, but there was still so much unsaid between us, so much to figure out before we could move forward. Rebecca's spare bedroom was comfortable but unfamiliar. I'd decided to stay with her rather than in our empty house, which held too many reminders of Nathan and the life we'd been building. I lay awake long into the night, staring at the ceiling and replaying moments from our relationship in my mind. Had there been warning signs I'd missed? Times when Nathan had tried to assert himself only to be overruled by my more forceful personality? There was the incident with the coffee table 6 months ago. We'd been shopping for living room furniture, and I'd fallen in love with a sleek modern piece while Nathan had preferred something more traditional. I'd made a case for my choice. It had storage. It matched our other furniture better. It was more practical for entertaining. Nathan had eventually conceded, saying, "You have better taste in these things anyway." At the time, I'd taken it as a compliment. Now I wondered if it had been a subtle surrender, another moment where he's given in rather than assert his preference. And what about our vacation last summer? Nathan had mentioned wanting to go hiking in Colorado, but I'd pushed for a beach trip to Florida, arguing that we could relax more and that the mountains would still be there next year. We'd gone to Florida, and Nathan had seemed to enjoy it. But had he really? Or had he just been going along with what I wanted? "You're still awake," Rebecca observed, appearing in the doorway with 2 mugs of chamomile tea. "Thought you might need this." I sat up against the headboard, accepting the warm mug gratefully. I can't stop thinking about all the times I might have steamrolled Nathan without realizing. Rebecca perched on the edge of the bed. "Want to talk about it?" For the next hour I poured out my realizations, small moments where I'd pushed for my preference without truly considering Nathan's, times when I'd presented decisions as already made rather than up for discussion. "The thing is," I said, wrapping my hands around the now empty mug, "I never thought of myself as controlling. I thought I was just being efficient, making decisions so things would get done." "Where do you think that comes from?" Rebecca asked thoughtfully. The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "Well, people don't develop these patterns out of nowhere. There's usually something behind them." I considered this, thinking back to my childhood and the patterns I'd observed in my own family. My parents had had a difficult marriage, full of conflict and eventual resentment. My father had been indecisive, often changing his mind or failing to follow through on plans. My mother had compensated by taking control of everything: finances, vacations, home improvements, often with a barely concealed frustration. "My mom," I said slowly, the realization dawning, "she always had to be in charge because my dad was so unreliable. I think I'm afraid of ending up like them if I don't have everything under control." Rebecca nodded encouragingly. "I watched them fight about every decision," I continued, memories surfacing that I hadn't considered in years. "Nothing was ever simple, and their marriage was so unhappy by the end. I guess I've been trying to make everything perfect with the wedding because I'm terrified of starting our marriage on the wrong foot." "So by controlling all the details," Rebecca prompted. "I'm trying to control the outcome," I finished, "to guarantee we won't end up like my parents." The irony wasn't lost on me. In my effort to avoid my parents' unhappy marriage, I'd been creating the very conditions that could lead to similar resentment. "But that's not how relationships work, is it?" I said, more to myself than to Rebecca. "You can't control your way to happiness." "No," she agreed gently, "you can't." "I need to trust Nathan more," I said. "Trust that even if we make some decisions differently than I would on my own, it doesn't mean everything will fall apart." Rebecca smiled. "That sounds like a good place to start. And I need to be honest with him about why I am the way I am," added. "He deserves to understand where this comes from." We talked a while longer, and I began making a mental list of things I wanted to change about my approach to our relationship. I needed to ask more questions and make fewer pronouncements. I needed to truly listen to Nathan's preferences, not just hear them and then explain why mine made more sense. I needed to be comfortable with compromise that sometimes leaned more toward what he wanted than what I wanted. But I also made a list of things I needed from him. I needed him to speak up when something mattered to him, not wait until resentment built. I needed him to be honest about his feelings, even when he thought they might upset me. I needed a partner who would engage with decisions, not just defer to me and then complain to others. What if we're not compatible after all? I asked Rebecca, voicing my deepest fear. What if our communication styles are just too different? Then you'll figure that out together, she said pragmatically, but you won't know until you try. And for what it's worth, I think you two are great together when you're both being authentic. The question is whether you can both show up fully in the relationship, even when it's difficult. As I finally drifted toward sleep in the early morning hours, I felt clear about what I wanted and needed. The hurt from Nathan's words hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something productive, a catalyst for growth and honesty that had been missing from our relationship. Tomorrow we would talk again, and this time I would bring my whole self to the conversation, not just the efficient decision-making Amber, but also the vulnerable woman who feared ending up in an unhappy marriage like her parents. It was time for both Nathan and me to see each other more completely. The next evening I returned home with a strange mixture of nervousness and determination. Nathan's car was already in the driveway, and I could see lights on inside our house. This conversation would either strengthen our relationship or reveal incompatibilities we couldn't overcome. Either way, I was committed to complete honesty. Nathan was sitting at our kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He looked up when I entered, his expression a complex blend of hope and anxiety that probably mirrored my own. "Hi," I said, setting down my overnight bag. "Hi," he responded, gesturing to the coffee. "I made your favorite, the hazelnut one." The small gesture of thoughtfulness touched me. Even in the midst of our conflict, he was thinking about what I liked. I sat across from him, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Thank you for giving me space yesterday. I needed time to think." "Me too," Nathan said. "I stayed up late talking with Megan actually. She told me I've been an idiot." A small smile tugged at my lips. "Sisters are good for that." She pointed out that I have a pattern of avoiding difficult conversations until things build up too much, he continued. "It's something I learned from my dad. In my family, everyone tiptoes around problems until they explode. Not exactly the healthiest model." His self-awareness surprised and impressed me. "I've been doing some thinking about my family patterns too," I admitted. "My parents had a pretty unhappy marriage. My dad was really indecisive and unreliable, so my mom took control of everything. I think I've been trying so hard to make everything perfect with our wedding because I'm terrified of starting our marriage on the wrong foot." Nathan reached across the table, offering his hand. After a moment's hesitation, I took it. "I had no idea you felt that way," he said softly. "Because I never told you," I acknowledged. "I've never really talked about how my parents' marriage affected me. It's easier to just take charge than to admit I'm scared. And it's easier for me to go along with things than to risk conflict," Nathan added. "Not a great combination, is it?" I squeezed his hand. "Maybe not, but at least we're aware of it now." We sat in silence for a moment, the air between us charged with unspoken thoughts. "I've been thinking about the wedding," Nathan finally said, "about what I actually want versus what I've been going along with." I braced myself, expecting a list of complaints about my choices. "The truth is, I don't care that much about most of the details," he continued, "but there are a few things that do matter to me. I'd really like to write our own vows rather than using traditional ones, and I'd prefer a smaller wedding party, just a best man and maid of honor. Not the 6 people on each side we've been planning." His requests were reasonable and neither contradicted anything I felt strongly about. "I'd be happy with both of those changes," I said honestly. "What about the venue? Do you still wish we'd chosen the barn instead?" Nathan considered this. "I liked the rustic feel of it, but you were right about the practical advantages of the downtown venue. What if we incorporated some rustic elements into the decor to blend both our styles?" The suggestion was so simple, so obvious, and yet we'd never discussed it before. "I'd love that," I said, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "We could use wooden centerpiece, maybe some natural greenery instead of formal flower arrangements." For the next hour, we reimagined our wedding, finding compromises that honored both our preferences. The process felt collaborative in a way our planning hadn't before, with both of us offering ideas and genuinely considering the other's suggestions. "I feel like we're actually planning our wedding now, not just my wedding or your wedding," I observed. Nathan nodded. "This is how it should have been all along." "We need to figure out how to communicate better," I said, bringing us back to the core issue, not just about the wedding but about everything. "I've been thinking about that too," Nathan said. "What if we had a regular check-in, like once a week we sit down and talk about anything that's bothering us, even if it seems small. That way things don't build up. I'd like that, I agreed. And I need to work on truly listening to your input, not just hearing it and then explaining why my idea makes more sense. And I need to actually give input instead of just going along with things and then resenting them later, Nathan added. We continued talking, creating what felt like new relationship rules. Nathan promised to voice his feelings before they became overwhelming. I promised to create space for his opinions and to consider them with an open mind. I think we should go to that premarital counseling session my aunt recommended, I suggested, not because we're in trouble, but because we could use some professional guidance on communication. To my surprise, Nathan agreed readily. That's a good idea, maybe 2 or 3 sessions, just to give us some tools for the future. As our conversation wound down, I felt closer to Nathan than I had in months. The voice memo had been painful, but it had forced us to address issues that might otherwise have festered for years. I have one more suggestion, Nathan said, a hint of mischief in his eyes. What if we took a break from wedding planning this weekend and just had some fun? No discussions about centerpiece or guest lists, just you and me remembering why we want to spend our lives together in the first place. The suggestion was so perfectly what we needed that I laughed out loud. That sounds amazing. What did you have in mind? Remember that hiking trail outside the city that we talked about exploring last year but never got around to? What if we packed a picnic and spent Saturday out there just enjoying each other's company? The fact that he'd remembered a small conversation from months ago touched me deeply. I'd love that. As Nathan pulled me into a hug, I felt the tension of the past 2 days finally release. We still had work to do, patterns to change and trust to rebuild, but for the first time since hearing that voice memo, I felt confident that we would find our way through this stronger than before. I love you, Nathan whispered against my hair, not despite your organized, decisive nature but including it. It's part of what makes you who you are. And I love you, I replied, including your easygoing nature and your desire for harmony. We just need to find a better balance. That night, as we lay talking in bed, I realized that the accidental voice memo, painful as it had been, might have been the best thing that could have happened to us before our wedding. It had forced us to confront issues that might otherwise have eroded our relationship slowly over years. Sometimes the most difficult moments in relationships become the turning points that make them stronger. 2 months later, I stood in a small room at our downtown venue, Rebecca helping me with the final touches on my wedding dress. It was simpler than my original choice, an elegant align with minimal beading rather than the elaborate princess-style gown I'd initially selected. The change felt right, a reflection of our new approach to the wedding and to our relationship. Nervous, Rebecca asked, adjusting my veil. Not about marrying Nathan, I answered truthfully, just about remembering my vows. After our reconciliation, we'd reimagined our wedding together, scaling back some elements while enhancing others that held special meaning for us. The guest list was smaller, the decorations a perfect blend of my elegant vision and Nathan's rustic preferences. The wooden centerpiece with wildflowers and greenery captured both our styles beautifully. The premarital counseling sessions had been transformative, giving us practical tools for communication that we'd implemented immediately. Our weekly check-ins had become a cherished ritual, a safe space to voice concerns before they could fester into resentment. The ceremony itself was everything I could have hoped for. As I walked down the aisle toward Nathan, his eyes filled with tears at the sight of me, I felt a certainty that had nothing to do with perfect planning and everything to do with the work we'd put into understanding each other. Nathan's vows made reference to our journey in a way that only those closest to us would fully understand. Amber, I promise to always tell you what I'm thinking and feeling, even when it's difficult, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I promise to be an active partner in our decisions, not just a passenger going along for the ride. I promise to remember that our differences make us stronger when we embrace them instead of avoiding them. My own vows echoed similar themes. Nathan, I promise to listen to you, truly listen, not just to respond but to understand, I said, squeezing his hands. I promise to value your perspective and to remember that compromise isn't about winning or losing but about finding solutions that honor both our needs. I promise to trust that our love is strong enough to withstand disagreement and honest communication. At the reception, surrounded by our closest friends and family, I felt a deep contentment that had nothing to do with whether the centerpiece were perfectly aligned or the cake was exactly as I'd envisioned. What mattered was the foundation we'd built for our marriage, one of honesty, communication, and mutual respect. During the father-daughter dance, my dad surprised me with an emotional admission. "Your mother and I didn't give you the best example of marriage," he said quietly as we moved across the dance floor, "but watching you and Nathan today, the way you look at each other, you've found something real, something better than what we had." His words touched me deeply. Perhaps that had been my deepest fear, repeating my parents' patterns, but Nathan and I were writing our own story, one that acknowledged the influences of our past without being bound by them. Later, as Nathan and I shared a quiet moment away from the celebration, his sister Megan approached us with an apologetic smile. "Can I steal you for a minute, Amber?" she asked. Nathan squeezed my hand before letting me go, and Megan led me to a quiet corner of the venue. "I owe you an apology," she said directly. "When Nathan sent me that voice memo, I should have told him to talk to you directly instead of venting to me. I enabled a pattern that wasn't healthy for your relationship." "It's okay," I assured her. In a strange way, that voice memo was exactly what we needed. It forced us to address issues we might have ignored until they caused real damage. Megan looked relieved. "Nathan called me the day after you heard it, you know. He was devastated that he'd hurt you. He told me he was wrong and that he'd realized how much he loves you, how committed he is to making your relationship work." Her revelation warmed me. Even in the midst of our conflict, Nathan had defended our relationship to the very person he's expressed doubts. "We've both learned a lot," I told her, "about communication, about ourselves. The wedding planning brought out some issues, but I'm grateful we discovered them before the wedding, not after." Megan hugged me tightly. "Welcome to the family, officially. I've always wanted a sister." 1 year later, Nathan and I sat at our kitchen table for our weekly check-in, a tradition we'd maintained faithfully since before our wedding. These conversations had evolved from awkward, hesitant exchanges to comfortable, open discussions about everything from household chores to future plans. "I was thinking about that voice memo the other day," Nathan said, surprising me, "about how something that felt so catastrophic at the time ended up changing our relationship for the better." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. It forced us to confront patterns we might have ignored for years. As painful as it was, I'm grateful it happened when it did. "Our communication is so different now," he observed. "Remember last month when we disagreed about whether to accept that job offer in Chicago? A year ago I might have just gone along with what you wanted to avoid conflict, or complained to Megan instead of talking to you directly. And I might have pushed my preference without really considering yours," I added. "Instead, we actually discussed it from both sides and came to a decision together. We'd decided to stay put for now, but with a plan to revisit the possibility of relocation in 2 years, a compromise that genuinely satisfied both of us." "Do you think we would have gotten here without that crisis?" Nathan wondered. "Eventually, maybe," I said thoughtfully, "but it might have taken something even more serious to wake us up. Sometimes the things that hurt us most become our greatest opportunities for growth." The voice memo that had once threatened to destroy our relationship had instead become the catalyst for building something stronger, more honest, and ultimately more loving than what we'd had before. It had taught us that true intimacy comes not from avoiding difficult conversations, but from engaging in them with respect and care for each other. "I'm grateful for what we've built together," I told him, reaching for his hand across the table, "not despite the challenges, but because of how we've faced them." As I look back on that pivotal moment, hearing Nathan's voice expressing doubts about our future, I realize now that what I heard in that voice memo didn't break me or our relationship. It made me stronger, more self-aware, and ultimately a better partner. It gave us the opportunity to build a marriage on honesty rather than avoidance, on collaboration rather than control. Sometimes the most painful moments become the turning points that led us exactly where we need to go. Have you ever had a relationship moment that completely changed your perspective? A time when something painful ultimately led to growth? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you navigated your own relationship challenges, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life relationship stories. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest blessings in disguise.